In this video, we're going to go over a series of pointers for virtual assistants of how to measure the linear feet of Christmas lights when we're providing a quote using Google Earth. So we're going to take measurements using Google Earth. Make sure to take the measurements in linear feet too. That's the first pointer. So while we do that, let's open up Google Earth so we can actually look at some examples. So when we're looking at Google Earth examples, we're going to want to get a bird's eye view image of the house, i.e., pick the very center point of the house and look like straight down right at it. So this is the perfect image is really what I'm alluding to is what is on the camera. So as you can see here, we're looking right at the street down the center of the house where the driveway is situated in the front of the house. The driveway is oftentimes situated in the front of the house that's where the Christmas lights are going to be focused. So when we provide quotes for Christmas lights, we're assuming that we're installing lights on the front of the house on all given roof lines and peaks. So along the gutter lines, up the peaks, down the peaks, and then a couple feet around the corner, 5 feet around each corner, 5. So, and make sure this is in linear feet again. So as you can tell, I'm situated right above the house. You're going to put the right address in the little magnification, search area. Once you get to do that, I'm going to move my head out of the way. You're going to click this button where it says measure distance and area. Looking at the bird's eye view image of the house, you're going to measure where the Christmas lights are going to be installed. Again, they're going to be installed the front of the house, 5 feet around each corner, the left and the right. So I'm going to start that 5 feet, just about right there, estimating it's about 5 feet. Boom, right about, just about, yep, 5 feet. And then I'm going to go to that very corner where the lights are pretty much going to start. The 5 feet around each corner, so we have a little cushion for margin of error. I'm gonna click on each given corner, like the extreme point of the roof. So this is a flat gutter along the front of this house. So I'm going to install Christmas lights along the entire front of the house along that gutter line. So as you can tell, I just went all the way to the front of the house, and then I need 5 more feet around the corner. So that's about 85 feet total. That's the measurement for this home's requirement for Christmas lights. So we need to provide, install, remove 85 feet of gutter of Christmas lights along the front gutter line. So that's where the lights are going to be installed. That's how you'd measure where the lights are going to go. This house needs 85 feet. Let's look at a couple more examples. So looking at the house to the left, this is a 2-story house. Maybe it's a 3,000 square foot house, plus or minus. I'm going to measure where the Christmas lights are going to go. In this situation, on the prior house, it was just along the gutter line. This home has peaks. This is what I mean by a peak, where this area does not have a gutter. It sheds water towards either side of the roof, but there's no gutter along the perimeter of where this roof is, because this part of the roof is a peak. Okay, so Christmas lights are going to be installed along the peak, and I'm going to mimic the shape of this peak, which is running where my cursor is going. That's the peak. The peak is pretty much shaped like this because we're measuring the linear feet of where the Christmas lights are going to go. So I'm trying to mimic the shape of that peak by pretty much measuring it like roughly a 30-degree angle. So then I'm going back to the gutter line, and it's up the peak, down the peak, and then along the gutter line along the front, and then around 5 more feet. So that was 75 feet. And then I also forgot to measure over here, right? The 5 more feet around the corner. So 75 feet, and look where that highlighter is showing. It's everywhere except that first little corner. I forgot that 5 feet. So 75 feet plus 5 on that other side, that's 80 feet. Now let's measure the the first story section of this 2-story house. So looking where the Christmas lights are going to go, I think it was 80 feet on the second part. I'm going along the gutter line. That the whole way was the gutter line so far, and then this is up the peak, down the peak, and then the 5 feet around the corner. So it was 80 feet on the second story, 75 feet on the first story. So in total, 155 linear feet of Christmas lights are needed for installation and removal for this house, for this 2-story home, which is pretty normal. But maybe it's about 160 feet for a normal 2-story. Maybe it's about 90 feet for a single story, but it depends on the complexity of the geometry. So that's why we measure each time. So this house, 80 feet on the second story, 75 feet on the first. Now let's look at one more example. This is another 2-story house, but you can just see it only has a 2-story section that's visible for where the lights are going to go. So I'm going to start 5 feet around the corner, what I forgot to do last time. Just about 5 feet. Perfect. And then that was along the gutter. Now I'm up the peak, down the peak, along the gutter again. There's a gutter up until right here. You can kind of see where the corner, the roof is going to turn. And then along that gutter, up the peak, down the peak, along that gutter. So, and then 5 more feet around the corner. Let's see where it stops. What it looks like about, 95, 96 feet. So that's this house, this 2-story house. The Christmas lights requires 96 feet of Christmas lights. That was 5 feet around each corner and then along the gutter line and then up and down the peak. Let's look at one more example. So measuring where the Christmas lights are going to go. Look at this is another 2-story house. I'm going to go 5 feet on the second story. I'm measuring the gutters, measuring where the Christmas lights are going to go along the gutter line. So 5 feet around the corner. Then I'm going to mimic what the front of this house looks like. So just along the gutter on the second story, about 5 feet around the corner. So it's about 67 feet. And then let's look at the first story section, about 5 feet around the corner, along the gutter. This has just got a gutter line on the first story, no peaks. And then 5 feet around the corner. So 87 feet. And then I want to say the top story was 67 by memory. So 87 plus, let's mimic it, see if it was. Yeah, it's about 68, 67 feet. So whatever the summation of that is, 70 feet on the first story, and the prior measurement that was mentioned earlier on the first story. And then we sum those up. That's the total amount of Christmas lights that's required for this 2-story house for Christmas lights. So that's how you measure using Google Earth the linear feet of Christmas lights that are required by taking a bird's eye view image of the house, measuring it in linear feet, and following the process that we just did. Measure along the gutter line, up and down the peaks, and then 5 feet around the corner. And then you're going to sum that for a house. And then that's the measurement of Christmas lights that we need to be able to provide a quote for that house, and beyond providing a quote, the equipment, etc. for us. So that's the process for virtual assistants. That's how you do that, measuring the linear feet of Christmas